Several years ago, I, along with some other civilians, was invited to go on to Fort Hood to watch some of the training that our modern soldiers engage in. At some point during the day, they took us to a recreated Iraqi village and positioned us kind of on the edge on a rise so that we could look out and see the village in its entirety. As we stood there, there was an explosion, and then a gunfight broke out, and the training exercise had begun. Well, later that day, as we debriefed with some of the Fort Hood leadership, a gentleman by the name of Colonel John Rossi, Colonel at the time, spoke to me and he said, you know, there are so many things that you've seen during the day that really emphasize why it is so important for our military soldiers to have their head in the game, to be concentrated on the task at hand. And he said, it's a huge distraction when they're distracted by things on the home front, like what's going on in their child's school. Well, that kind of begs the question of, well, how on scale do we know how our military students are doing? In Texas, there are several military installations. In the United States, there are lots of military installations. Every so often, the Department of Defense will go through a process called base realignment and closure. And through that process, they make decisions. Some installations may be closed, some increased, some stay the same. Through the base realignment and closure process, or BRAC, as it's called, you may be going, well, okay, so, you know, big deal. But the comptroller recently came out and said that the economic activity generated from the military installations exceeds $136 billion in the state of Texas. It also generates, that economic activity generates over 800,000 jobs in the state of Texas. Now, BRAC is kind of shrouded in secrecy. No one really knows exactly how the decisions are made. However, there is some evidence that access to quality education for our military students is an important part of the process. So again, we have that question of, how do we know how our military students are doing? And can we answer that question? Well, I'll tell you, we could not answer that question with any precision until fairly recently. During the 2013-2014 school year, the Texas Education Agency implemented what was called the Military Student Identifier. So now school districts all over the state of Texas report to the agency information on military students. Well, we thought, well, let's grab some of that information and see what it tells us. So we went to the agency and asked for some demographic information. We also asked for achievement information based on the state assessment program. We merged those files, and here's what we found. Out of the 5.2 million students that are in the state of Texas, about 83,000 are military-connected students. Military-connected students are younger than non-military connected students. They're more represented in elementaries than they are middle or high schools. Military connected students are less enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program, which is kind of our metric for economically disadvantaged. Military connected students are less identified as being at risk than non-military connected students. Now that comes with a caveat because that's based on the state definition of at risk, which does not include deployments or mobility. And in terms of mobility, we find that our military-connected students are 2 times as mobile as our non-military students. Well, what about on the achievement front? Well, we looked at the state assessment, and we looked at 4 different passing standards. We looked at 3 different grades, grades 4, 8, and exit level, and we looked at 2 subjects, reading and writing. And when you look at that, it's hard to give you a soundbite answer as to how our military students are doing. However, if you look at the baseline, the accountability passing standard, in a statistically significant way, military connected students pass at higher rates, and we're controlling for several variables, they pass at higher rates than non-military students. Now why? Well, we don't know that yet, but I encourage you to stay tuned to the Military Student Identifier because it will help to answer that question and other questions in the near future. If you'd like to see the report, go to elrc.tamu.edu.